Professor John Allen Paulos is with us. He's a professor of mathematics at Temple University. He's the author of several books. His latest, A Numerate Life, A Mathematician Explores the Vagaries of Life, his own and probably yours, out this month. And his previous book is Innumeracy, A Mathematician Reads the Newspaper. You can see his writing over at temple.edu. And his Twitter is John Allen Paulos, Paulos. Allen, John, John Allen, John Allen Paulos. Professor Paulos, welcome to the program.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Sorry, my various words and names are a little bit confusing.
That's quite all right. But I'm not a mathematician. I understand that you wanted to make an apology to the American people.
In part. I mean, I don't really think I'm culpable. It's just it does what I did. That does occasionally rouse somewhat guilt-defying thought about my, in some indirect, minimal sense, being responsible for George Bush's being elected president in 2000. And
elected or selected?
Probably more the latter.
Yeah. So
I wrote as you remember, there was an essential tie in Florida: 3 million votes for Bush, 3 million for Gore, and there were these problems with the hanging chads, the misleading ballots, missing military ballots, all kinds of serious flaws. And there really was no fact of the matter who won. I wrote an op-ed. It was widely cited in the New York Times, and the title of it was "We're Measuring Bacteria with a Yardstick," in which I argued that the vote in Florida was so close that the gross apparatus of the state's electoral system was incapable of discerning the difference between Bush and Gore, which is fine. And I thought no more of it. I thought, we'll see how it plays out. But
it's kind of an academic observation, not a political one.
Florida Supreme Court, Charles Wells, cited me in his dissent from the majority decision of the Florida Supreme Court to allow for a manual recount of the undervote in Florida. So the majority of his court said, let's go on with the recount. And he rejected it, and he cited me in his rejection. He specifically said, I agree with a quote by John Allen Paulos, professor of mathematics at Temple, when he wrote that, quote, the margin of error is greater than the margin of victory. It's far greater than the margin of victory, no matter who wins, which is fine. That's what I did say. But then he went on to say, further judicial process will not change this self-evident fact and will only result in confusion and disorder. And then he went on to avoid that, I'm going to stop the recount procedure. So I was surprised, even a little bit flattered, I admit, but distressed that he'd used my words to support a position that I very much disagreed with. I got vituperative emails from people who didn't know.
So you thought that the state of Florida should do a recount, and
I think there was. I mean, I think they should have proceeded with it. It was so close. I mean, it was essentially a coin flip.
Yeah.
And at least with the recount, there was at least a 50-50 chance that Gore would have won Florida.
Well, and when the newspapers actually did that recount a year later, this consortium of the New York Times, Associated Press, USA Today, there were I think 5 of them. They found, and the New York Times buried this in the 17th paragraph in their article about it. This was in November of 2002. They found that by any measure, pimple chads, dimpled chads, pregnant chads, hanging chads, intent of voter, overvote, undervote, by any measure, Al Gore won the entire state. Had his original lawsuit where he was only suing in 3 counties stood, Al Gore would have still lost the election. But if you count the entire state, as the newspapers did, Gore definitely won Florida. And when the publisher was asked why that was buried in the 17th paragraph and essentially contradicted by the headline, because the headline referred to Gore's initial lawsuit in Dade County and 2 other counties and said had he been successful, he still would have lost the election. The publisher said that, we buried that because it was just 11 months after 9/11, and we did not want the presidency of George Bush during a time of national crisis to be questioned, his legitimacy.
Yeah, but there are all kinds of post-election studies. I mean, there are some in which Bush would have won. It depends on the assumptions, on the protocols, on the scenarios you adopt. But that was just the point. There, in a sense, there was no fact of the matter. I mean, I think a commemorative coin flip in Tallahassee would have been just as fair. And in a way, I mean, the fact that Gore won 500,000 more votes than Bush did should have been a moral tiebreaker, if nothing else. But at least flip a coin and give both of them a chance. I mean. And you're right. I mean, there are a good number of scenarios and assumptions that would have led to Gore's winning.
Right, and none of this counts for the fact that in the 3 months prior to the election, Jeb Bush ordered Catherine Harris, his Secretary of State, to run a purge of Florida voters, comparing names on the Florida voter database with the names of Texas felons, and simply knock those people off the voting rolls. So when they show up to vote, they get given placebo ballots that don't get counted, and provisional ballots. And the consequence of that was somewhere between 40,000 and 80,000 African Americans were disenfranchised, and that's still being litigated.
It was a sad chapter in American history because. I mean, it's also, I think, a potent argument for getting rid of the electoral system. I mean, But and so, I mean, the gist of my article in Salon was that even though I say I'm a butterfly, I talk a little bit about the butterfly effect in my book and the sometimes very significant consequences to tiny little differences. And one of them was this op-ed in the Times that I wrote, and was I responsible? No, of course not. But nevertheless, there was a lot of intermediate events that led to the selection of Bush, one of which was, as you mentioned, Jeb Bush, Catherine Harris, and a whole lot of other events. But nevertheless, it does disquiet me occasionally.
So, are you still getting abused for it?
No, I'm not. I mean, but I did at the time. I mean, all kinds of vituperative letters. People sent me pictures of myself with a bullseye on my forehead.
Yikes!
Letters from Nazis or so-called self-defined Nazis. No, it was.
Why would Nazis be upset? I mean, it was not.
Yeah,
the Democrat lost.
Well, I mean, I didn't respond to ask them why they were upset, but. Nevertheless, I mean, if you reach enough people, even if the percentage of crazies is small, a small fraction of a big number can be significant.
Yeah, as we learned in Colorado Springs, it just takes one.
Yeah, it just takes one all over the place. And,
and I guess you're right. We're losing that. We're learning that all over the place. So
and if just one has a gun, even though 99.999% of people are fine. That's sufficient to kill a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, which is a whole nother topic and a whole nother area. Professor,
yes, indeed.
Professor of Mathematics at Temple University, Professor John Allen Paulos is. You can tweet him at John John Allen Allen Paulos Paulos, or at Temple UNIV as in Temple University. Sir, and your books, A Numerate Life?
A Numerate Life. A mathematician explores the vagaries of life, his own and probably yours.
Right, and your previous book, Innumeracy, a mathematician reads the newspaper.
Anyway, thanks for having me, Tom.
Thank you. I look forward to checking out your books. Thank you. To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.